interesting one because, good evening, sir.
I beg, wetin I do you? Good evening.
But but the good part of the evening is that it is not the Nigerian team that was beaten tonight. So that part of it is good.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Any African team, na Nigerian, na African team for this World Cup, we know they there. We know they there. So any African team, na Nigerian team.
But sir, the night is very good for me.
Why?
It looks like I am winning the bet. I am winning. I'm counting.
Make we tell them we had a bet. If we get up to 10 people on our program this evening, up to 10, I go buy you ticket for final. If they no get up to 10, you go buy me final World Cup ticket. So I go use my korokoro eyes, count them this evening. No be you go tell me.
I'm sure that our viewers can very happily tell you tonight, sir, that for the first time in a long time, you have lost. You have lost tonight, sir. Okay. Unfortunately. So okay. You are buying me a ticket. But you are lucky. I'm not a good football fan. So you are spared tonight. You are spared tonight. Okay. Well, on that note, I want to welcome everyone that has joined and everyone who has contributed to my win tonight. I want to appreciate you very much for that win. But sir, let's start with the World Cup, since we started on a funny note tonight. Qatar has received quite a lot of negative press. What is your view on how the media has treated Qatar and some of the things that have taken place there, sir?
I think that when we talk about the media, a lot of us, and I'm sure most of the people who are our colleagues on this program, when we talk about the media, we think about the upscale media. You know, the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, London Times, Le Monde, Le Figaro, and so on and so forth. But in fact, the quality media is not up to 1/10 of the media that we have in the world. We have the underbelly of the media who are designed for the taste of, well, you know, your pop crawling carpenters, bricklayers, who specialize in foul language. In order for them to sell to that class, they must find something crude to say, something provocative to say. These are the people who, if Prince Harry scratches his head, oh, they will say Meghan has given him lies in the head. If he doesn't scratch his head, they will say she has twisted his fingers. I mean, that's the kind of media that finds nothing good in any nation apart from their own nation. And this is what has happened to Qatar. I mean, I don't know. I'm not one of them, so I don't know whether money changed hands for the decision to take that the World Cup to Qatar. But from when the FBI said that FIFA was at that time a cesspool of corruption, I'm sure they were not talking about Qatar alone. And in any case, both the giver and the taker are equally guilty of corruption. And I'm not even sure that Qatar had one vote on the team. Most of members of FIFA decision-making body were from Europe. So really, whose hands are clean? Having talked about that, they were now fault finders to find nothing good about anything that Qatar had done. Look, I mean, we've watched it now. About 3 days, 4 days. It's gone smoothly. It's gone perfectly. There's been proper crowd control. I'm aware of some European countries where the crowd management has been so appalling that people have died in trying to enter the stadium. Nothing like this has happened here. So they are now nitpicking here and there. I think Qatar has done itself proud. It has done the Arab world proud. It has done the global South proud. I think we should applaud Qatar for what they've done and for what they are doing. And I do hope, I mean, the World Cup has already come to South Africa. I'm hoping we will have it in middle of Africa. And I hope when that happens, we will emulate Qatar. We will get experts from Qatar to come and act as technical partners to whichever country, in the middle of Africa will be hosting it. I'm not saying Qatar is perfect, but which country is perfect? Tell me. Yes, immigrants have been badly treated, but the ILO said there's been considerable improvement. Does Europe want to tell me that their treatment of immigrants is any better than what Qatar has done? And if they're talking about, oh, look how much money Qatar has spent. Qatar is so rich that it can spend double that, and it will still not affect the standard of living of its people. And in any case, who can match, which country in the world where they have held World Cup can match the generosity that Qatar has promised, which is to dismantle some of these stadia and send them to countries in the global South who may need first-class stadia. Which country in the global North can match that level of generosity? So the media has not been fair to them. But if you're expecting the media to be fair to them, one will be misreading the standard of manners of journalists in the global north.
Given where we are now, I know it's somewhat early days, sir, but who are you backing in this World Cup tournament?
Emotionally, if any of the African countries win, it will be a win for us. But mentally, my head tells me that we should be looking at it's early days yet. From what I have seen, I don't think I'm ready to put a bet on the table. It's early days. People are probably nervous. This is the first round. Maybe by the time we get to the second round, then we will start to see skills that are available in Brazil, in France, Argentina, even though they were surprised, by Saudi Arabia, England, So let's wait for the second round.
I was just hoping that I will get another win for tonight.
Who are you betting on? Who are you betting on?
I have won hands down tonight. So
who are you betting on? Let's deal with that.
No, the elders have said it is the horse in front that the one at the back is following. So I will follow you in saying it is early days. And then we'll wait till the next time before I tell you who I am rooting for.
Okay, it will be Trump.
All right, sir. Let's talk about South Africa, sir, and the fact that South Africa has been the first country to be on a state visit to see King Charles. Before we talk about the speeches given by each one of them, what do you think of the reception that the South African president got?
No, well, it is the standard procedure. Horse carriage reception, inspection of the guards, brigade, state dinner, meeting with the city, having a meeting with the British South African Association, and visiting, Kew Gardens, where you have special plants from all over the world, cultivated, giving the interest of the king in environmental matters. Standard procedure.
What do you think of the comment by the king as he gave the speech when he said, the late Queen had great pleasure of hosting Presidents Mandela, Mbeki, and Zuma for state visits to the United Kingdom, all of which I was present. On each of those occasions, she expressed her admiration for your country, its people, its vibrancy, natural beauty, and diversity. What do you think that would have done to South Africans who were listening to that?
A sense of pride that they must be unique if practically all their presidents had been guests in Buckingham Palace, that there must be a special relationship between South Africa and Great Britain, which I'm not surprised there is. Everybody knows that from the time of the Zulu Wars, the fight for the Cape Colony, between the Cape Colonies and the United Kingdom, and the fact that it was a British colony until, like Canada and Australia, it became almost the first generation of Commonwealth countries. One is not surprised that King Charles picked on that. But the one that struck me, and one must give King Charles kudos for that, was he again seized the opportunity to apologize for slavery and for colonialism. This has become, the first time, I believe, when he first said this was when he was Prince of Wales and went on a visit to the West Indies, Barbados, I suspect it was, where he apologized for slavery and colonialism, that he recognized it was a stain on the relationship between Britain and the Commonwealth. And he also said it, I think, in Kigali at the Commonwealth Conference. He has now repeated this. Recall that when Her Majesty died, Amonpo, in one of our programs, said Prince Charles should distance himself from the refusal of the Queen to deal with the question of reparations, and that if King Charles wants to make a difference, he should squarely face this question of reparations. It's not going to happen because the wealth of Britain is built on accumulated wealth from the period of slavery and the period of colonialism. The British imperial crown is studded with diamonds from India, from South Africa. Are you going to unplug that? They are valueless. You can't even put a value on them. I think there are things we should let's keep the expectations within the realm of reality. I'm saying this, I don't know whether it's one of the issues you are going to raise. I'm saying this against the backdrop that Namibia had decided to pay reparations to Namibia. There is pressure on Belgium to also pay reparations to the DRC. At the last, just concluded climate change conference in Egypt, the question of reparations, even though that's not the word used, came to the fore when they talked about money that the global north should pay the global south for the effect of climate change, you know, the floods, the fire, the drought, which are all consequences of things which the global south was not responsible for. That came to the fore, and it was bitterly opposed. And that is why the conference went 2 days overboard, with the global north saying no and the global south saying yes, and each side threatening to derail the conference if the issue was not faced frontally. Although no figures, no financial figures were attached. I'm now talking about the climate conference. So I'm not expecting Charles, King Charles III. I'm not expecting him to go beyond what he had said. In any case, it will be a British decision of the government. And I don't expect that the present Prime Minister will stick out his neck on that. When you then look at the speech of Ramaphosa, Cyril Ramaphosa, there were no, he made reference, yes, to the special relationship between the two countries and how he wants Britain and this country to benefit from investment flow to South Africa, especially into the mining area and into the technological areas, especially vaccine production. No, he didn't stray into what I would call controversial areas in his speech. And he repeated practically the same speech at the lunch that the City of London held for him. So all in all, I think it's been a good visit.
There's a point there I want to get your view on, sir, from the speech of the president of South Africa. He said something there. He said he was talking about the statue of Queen Victoria in the parliament in South Africa, and also the statue of Nelson Mandela. And he said these statues are part of the history of a relationship that was founded in colonialism and conflict, dispossession, and degradation. And yet these statues are also part of a story of redemption. Do you agree with him bringing those two thoughts together using the same statues?
You know, I've never really sat down to deconstruct this controversial issue about statues. Now that you've raised it, you've confronted me with an issue on which I haven't made up. I've never really given a very, very strong thought. It's a universal thing this issue of what to do about statutes of people whose contribution to history, to say controversial is an understatement, has been evil. Let me put it that way. You couldn't have taken part in slavery and we just say, oh, it's controversial. Will you put up a statue to Hitler? Would you? In Britain? Will you put up statue of Hitler in Leningrad? No, of course you wouldn't. So why then does it become a problem to pull down the statue of King Leopold, not even in the Congo, but even in Brussels itself? Why should it be regarded as controversial to pull down the statue of Queen Victoria in South Africa? I recall one of the good things Nigeria did was to remove the statue of Queen Elizabeth II done by Ben and Wowu. Before our independence, it was mounted right in front of the old parliament in Lagos. And after independence, it was removed. Now, if we could do that to Queen Elizabeth's statue, whose connection with the evils of colonialism in Nigeria was kind of vicarious, why should the statue of Queen Victoria be standing in the Parliament of South Africa? Now, I believe that, in fact, in agreeing for the statue of Nelson Mandela to be in Parliament Square in London, actually, it's an honor that Mandela, was doing to England, given the role of the United Kingdom in the history of South Africa. Probably in another 20 years' time, we will know which country betrayed Nelson Mandela to the security forces of South Africa that allowed him to be captured, tried. He narrowly escaped being hanged. The judge who presided over the case has been interviewed as to why did they sentence him to life rather than giving him the death sentence. And I don't know, I'm not really persuaded by the explanation given by the judge, but it's one of the Western countries' intelligence service that leaked where he was to the South African intelligence service and allowed him to be captured to spend 30-something years in Robben Island, where he was when he lost his son, led to his marriage breaking down, and so on and so forth. So actually, you asking me this question has probably allowed me to focus my mind on an issue which really I haven't given much thought about. So really, the conclusion is I don't equate the statue of Queen Victoria with the statue of um, um,
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. Just as I will not equate the statue of General Eisenhower with the statue of Patrice Lumumba, because President Eisenhower signed on to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And we could go from one colony to the other and do the same kind of deconstruction. I, for example, think Nigeria should, a long time ago, have changed the name of Port Harcourt. It was named after Harcourt, who was a pedophile, an extremely cruel man, whom I believe finally committed suicide rather than face trial. I think Lagos, which is a Portuguese name, should have reverted to Eko. You recall one of the things that the states in the North did was to change, not that I agree with them on that, but I'm just making parallels, was to change the names of all the Christian churches, schools, and change them to state names, while we in the South are still keeping, Port Harcourt, Lagos, even Victoria Island, named after Queen Victoria. So thank you for raising a question that has now allowed me to wrap it around my brain and come to a conclusion.
All right, sir. One last thing, sir, and I want to link this to a question you addressed last week when Prince Charles was talking. Just like I quoted a few minutes ago, he referred to the Queen receiving 3 South African presidents, but importantly, he said, all of which I attended. So that sense of longevity was there. And last week, we were talking about the role of the legislator in Kenya who was suggesting if you have a capable leader, then maybe you should just amend the constitution and let the person stay there. We see a real life story in Equatorial Guinea, where someone who has been in power for 43 years is now contesting again and somehow has managed to win 99% of the votes that were counted so far. Is Equatorial Guinea an example of where things are working and therefore it makes sense to keep the leader?
What happened to that remaining 1%? The man is probably going to release the intelligence service of Equatorial Guinea to look for that missing 1%. I'm surprised that he didn't just declare 100%. It reminds me, and you know where they copied it from? They copied it from the old Soviet Union. And it reminds me of what Stalin said. He said, it isn't the people who vote that counts. It is the people who count the votes that matter. So I'm not surprised. That is a 99-point-something%. Equatorial Guinea had the unfortunate circumstance of being saddled with this present president. Now, let me, on this program for the first time, reveal a secret. The president, the king of Belgium and the wife came visiting Nigeria when I was a foreign minister. And after the talks in Lagos and the ceremonies, we decided to take him to the north. I can't remember now whether it was Kaduna or Kano, but we decided. And we went in the presidential plane, and I sat in front of the king and the queen. And at that time, there was, Equatorial Guinea was in the news for all the wrong reasons. And the king said to me, why don't you just go and take it over and relieve everybody in the world of that miserable country? Of course, I was a foreign minister. So I said, sir, I will pass your message on to my president. He said, yes, look, yes, of course, we will criticize you. We will make all the usual rightful noises, but we will heave a sigh of relief. Because by that time, this same man, who was a general in the Equatorial Guinea Army, had taken over and was busy executing people right, left, and center. Now, I recall in 1975, when Murtala took over government, and I was appointed to the institute, raising this issue with General Murtala Mohammed, because at that time, actually, the population-wise, the Nigerian immigrant workers in Equatorial Guinea were more in population than the actual citizens of Equatorial Guinea. And I think some of them had just been killed, and there were riots and what have you. And I said to General Murtala Mohammed, sir, why don't you just send in a battalion and take over the place? You have a good excuse. They are killing your men, they're killing nationals of your country. Murtala said to me, after giving me a long look, he said, I have enough problems ruling Nigeria. Don't let me add to it. That's what he said. I have my own interpretation of why he didn't do so. Because, again, it will have affected the balance of population between the North and the South in Nigeria. That's why he didn't do so. So really, we've lost two opportunities. One under General Mohammed, the other under IBB, of helping the Equatorial Guinea people to get rid of this monstrous human being who presides over them as president. Don't forget, it was his son who was found guilty in a court in Paris of using state funds to buy all kinds of super luxury cars, mansions, chateaus, castles in France, using the money of the state. They are lucky that they have oil. And given the size of the country and the size of the oil that they have, the president could steal 90% of the oil, and probably the country wouldn't miss it. Of course, if that money were properly used, it could have turned Equatorial Guinea into the Switzerland of Africa. But then, I mean, when you know the background of the president, and yet when he dies, like when Mobutu died, what's going to happen to all that property? One of my own regrets about Mobutu's properties in the DRC was that the government who took over from him simply allowed them to go to waste, to go to decay. For God's sake, if you travel to the United States as a visitor of the state, they will take you to some of the buildings of 1776, which were built, and which are historical values. They are still well maintained and what have you. But here in Africa, we think it's vengeance. Let it decay, forgetting that they were built by state funds and they could just have been maintained. If you like, turn them into hospitals. If you like, turn them into schools, or just maintain them. But no, we leave them to decay. A pity.
A quick question, sir, is looking at the Sahel, that area seems to be blowing up. Quite a lot of people are talking about it, including Ghana's president. But before addressing that point specifically, sir, the United Kingdom has indicated that their troops may be moving out of Mali, and there are other countries as well that are moving out of Mali. What is it about Mali that's causing everybody to move out? And secondly, the UK is thinking about going to Ghana in a shift to their strategy against terror. What do you think about that situation there, sir?
Well, the first question, which I will ask all these countries, France, Great Britain, even Germany, what have you been doing in Mali all these years that you could not defeat the jihadists? What have you been? If you were serious, you could have defeated the jihadists just as the United States defeated ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. They defeated them if you were really serious. But you sat there doing what? Maintaining Western influence. And now finally, your stay there became untenable because
Hello, sir. Can you hear me, sir? I think I may have lost Prof. Just bear with me 1 second. and I'll try to get him back. No, sir. We will continue from that question next week, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. No problem, sir. No problem. Yeah. Um, and he would not be able to come back on. I do apologize. I hope you can hear me. I'm not sure if you can or not, but he's lost his connection there. I do apologize for that. Um, Let me just remove that. Thank you all very much for joining tonight. Like I said, we've lost Prof's connection, and I will continue from this topic next week. Thank you so much for your time.